At this time, I'd like to call to order the City of North Ridgeville Planning Commission meeting. Everyone, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Secretary, please call roll.
Members of the board, Ali,
Present.
Trotman is excused. Swallow. Here. Havens.
Here.
Smolik.
Here.
Members of the administration. Prosecutor Sean Kelleher.
Here.
City engineer Christina Evanson. Brett. Here. Planning and Economic Development Director Lieber. Here.
Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes from the previous meeting? Is there any corrections at this time? Hearing none, those minutes shall stand. Madam Secretary, is there any correspondence brought to the board today?
Now,
Okay. Madam Secretary, please read the first application.
Angie's Coffee, 34906 Center Ridge Road, North Ridgeville, Ohio, 44039, PPN 07-00-016. -101-051, applicant Ryan Lazuka, Abilene Holdings LLC, 19885 Detroit Road, suite number 210, Rocky River, Ohio, 44116. Proposal consists of a 312 square foot drive-through only coffee shop. Property is zoned B3. Chief building officials' recommendations: verify side yard is minimum 15 feet. All else appears code compliant.
Okay, is there a number for the application? You want to tell us about your project?
Sure.
And if there's anybody else who is talking, please come up to the microphone and state your name and address for the record.
You want me to?
Yes, please.
My name's Ryan Lazuka, and address is 19885, or for this project, it's Center Ridge Road, 34906.
Yeah, your own.
I own, okay, 19885 Detroit Road, number 210, Rocky River, Ohio, 44116. That should be it.
Are you going to, is there a way we could get the mic in here? Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you for meeting all of us tonight. I appreciate it, especially I know the Indians game's on a little bit too. So, or the Guardians, I should say. Our proposal is for Angie's Coffee Shop. The location is 34906 Center Ridge Road. And to give you an idea where that is, if you see the rectangle on the right, that's City Diner. And on the left is CVS Drugstore, and J Cox is still left of that. Our location is in a parking lot of EQ Technologies. There's 2 parking lots there, and we'll get to that in a little bit. So before I get into the concept, we'll just go over the team that's helping us. So that's me, I'm the owner operator. My background's in computer programming, and I have experience in doing design build work. We built our own house. It's a long story. I won't bore you with the details, but I sort of want to get back into doing something in the real world. We want to be, our whole family wants to be a part of the community. You know, behind the desk, remote work is very popular these days, but it sort of gets old, and I want to sort of have face-to-face interaction with the community. That's Jason Brent. He's the property owner. It's hard to find a picture of you. But he's an IT technician in North Ridgeville City Schools. He's a resident of North Ridgeville for the last 12 years. And he's the owner of multiple small businesses, and EQ Technologies is one of them. So I have no experience doing coffee. We need help. So we hired a consultant, Marie. She's out of Utah. She has 3 coffee drive-throughs. She's been doing it for 8 years. She's very successful at it. And she's helping us with all coffee-related components of the business. That's Dom. He's sitting behind us over here. Dom's on this, he sits on the planning commission board for the city of Ridgeville. And he's been invaluable helping us with city planning and zoning. Jeremy is here as well. He's the architect and the owner of Onward Design Collaborative architectural firm out of Lakewood. The one nice thing about Jeremy is that he sits on the architectural board of review at Lakewood. So that's been a huge help with planning as well. He's got 14 years of experience. So with any good business plan, you want to address the problem. One of the problems in North Ridgeville is there's a large shortage of drive-through coffee shops on Center Ridge Road in particular. Now, I know there might be another one going in, but even if there is another one going in right by us, there still would only be two drive-through coffee shops on that whole stretch of road through North Ridgeville that I know. There is McDonald's, but they serve other things as well. And overall, there's a huge shortage of drive-through coffee shops in the Midwest and East Coast. If you go out to the West Coast, there's drive-through coffee shops everywhere, and in particular, drive-through only coffee shops, and they're sort of spreading their way over here. So for example, Dutch Brothers is the 3rd largest coffee shop behind Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts, but a lot of people here haven't heard about them, but they are drive-through only. So the concept is, again, drive-through only. These are some example buildings on the right of drive-through only coffee shops. It's not us. I just want to give you an idea of what they look like. Again, the drive-through demand is growing. And for example, Starbucks' business, 70% of it comes through drive-through only traffic. And they're sort of switching to their business model to that as well. They're closing some stores that don't have drive-throughs and opening stores that have drive-throughs. So with any good business, we wanted to address three key business principles. One is speed, and that's for a few reasons. One of them is to address traffic concerns, to get people in and out. I know when I pull up to a Dunkin' Donuts and I see a 20-car backup, it leaves a bad taste in my mouth, and usually I don't want to go back. We really want to mitigate that by focusing on speed, and we're only going to serve coffee, and that should help with the speed. Someone's not going to pull up and have to order a dozen donuts or decide what kind of food they want. Next is affordability. We don't want to be a high-end brand like Starbucks. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but we want to be affordable to everyone. So a price point probably a little bit less than Dunkin' Donuts. And friendliness. Again, when I pull into a Chick-fil-A, for example, usually it's a good experience. The staff is well trained, and the simple "my pleasure" goes a long way. We want to do something similar to that with our shop. So these are some of the architectural elevations that Jeremy came up with. If you reviewed everything before the meeting, you'll see that the building is very small. It's 12 by 26. On the upper right-hand side is the service window. That's where we'll be serving cars. And the top left is the front of the building. This just shows you a basic layout of what the interior will look like. On the right is the service window. Everything is ADA compatible, and again, the dimensions are on there for the exterior. So these are just some elevations from the street. So this would be kind of if you're in the city diner parking lot, that's what it'll look like from there. You can see the service window and the order board as well, which I'll get into in a little bit. That's just a little bit further back from the street. This is right on the street, right in front of EQ Technologies and the parking lot. And this is, if you're in the drive-through queue, this is what it would look like from the car. No one was ahead of you, obviously. So the site plan. It's hard to get everything on one slide, so I split it up into two. But it should be self-explanatory. The car's pulling in, shows the queue. They'd be pulling up to the drive-through window and pulling forward, which is the next queue, and turning to the left and coming back out on onto the main road. One of the concerns in the last meeting was how does the garbage truck get into the dumpster? That path is shown on there in the upper left corner. Another concern was, which we'll get into a little bit, was landscaping. That's shown around the building. And those details are called out on the actual hard copy site plan or the digital copy as well. So this is more towards EQ Technology building is on the top, and it just shows the space that the cars have to turn left there. There should be plenty of space. It's 30 feet between the building, our building, and the nearest parking spot. And also there's a water line, which is 1 inch in diameter on the bottom in the middle of the screen too. The city wanted to know that. I call this the water department, it's 1 inch. We'd be tying into that, which also runs to the main building. So with any fast food coffee shop, there's a problem, you know, with traffic, and the city's concerned about that. I would say there's no ideal solution, but I think we found a really good spot for various reasons. I drove almost all over Cleveland on every main road in every suburb. This is one of the best locations I could find. And that's because it's got a middle turning lane. It's got 2 lanes of traffic in each direction. The speed limit is 35 miles per hour. Our coffee consultant said you want something at least or no more than 35 miles per hour. So we fit that criteria. And there's a stoplight on Jaycox. So we really checked off a lot of boxes. A lot of cities' streets do not have all these things together. And to give you an idea of how many cars per day we would handle, ODOT is very convenient. They tell you for whatever street you want, how many cars per day. Visit that street. There's 17,000 on Center Ridge Road per day on average. Again, our coffee consultant said about 0.5% you should expect in your first year to stop at your shop. That number will grow, but that's about 85 cars per day, and we'd be able to easily handle that. So that brings up another thing. We are applying for a variance for the signage, and I applied for that last Friday. The reasons being, we had long discussions with Kim and Dan Rodriguez. We didn't even think this project would be able to move forward because there's an upper and lower lot of EQ Technologies. We wanted it in the upper lot, the building, for visibility reasons from the street, but the only practical place that would work is in the place that was on the site plan, which is in the lower lot. Now the lower lot's about 4 feet lower than the upper lot, and it took away a great amount of visibility from the road. So that was a concern on my end, you know, as someone looking at the business side of things, is a huge risk. Also, the code for the signage is based on the building frontage. Our building is just smaller by design, but we feel like we were kind of penalized a little bit because our building's so small. If the building was a little bit bigger, we'd be able to have a bigger sign. The business needs to be profitable, so I'm just trying to mitigate whatever risk we can to have the building be able to be seen from the road so people can come down and get coffee. So these are some pictures I took today to give you an idea of why we were applying for the variance. This is going eastbound on Center Ridge Road, and the coffee shop would be about where the arrow is, but it'd be lower than that van that's parked right there, about 4 feet lower, because that's the upper lot that you're seeing right now. And the roof line would probably be right around where the car is parked. Our sign would be on the roof, but still, as you can see, it's a little tricky to see things from the road in this spot. It's even worse on the city diner side. It's sort of the building, city diner sits so close to the road, we'd be set back farther than the city diner. It would just make it a little bit harder for people seeing if they're going west on the street. And finally, this is the heads-on shot. But you can see, you see the van there, the cars behind it are in the lower parking lot. So it gives you an idea how much lower it is. All we're asking for is that the top version of the signage is code compliant and the bottom is a larger version.
I just want to make sure you realize this is planning commission. We're going to look at the variance. That'd be the board of zoning building.
Sure.
All right. So just make sure you realize that.
Yeah, no, I just, We just wanted to be transparent as possible.
Perfect.
We were told that the planning and the zoning sort of have to go hand in hand. So I can skip this, but if you want.
No,
but
that's fine. I just
sure.
want to make sure this won't be decided tonight.
Sure, no, we understand that 100%. Yeah. I mean, even if you gave us the go ahead and the variance could get rejected, we understand.
Correct.
A few more slides on this, I promise.
Can you go back to the signage? I think you were interrupted. You were showing us the difference.
Yes, so the top one is 18 feet long and 6 feet high, which is code compliant. The bottom one is 21 foot 4 inches and 7 feet high. So it's a difference of a little over 3 feet on width and 1 foot on height. On the variance application, it says it will impact the neighbors. We don't think it will. It won't impact the line of sight. We don't feel it's substantial, but that's up to the variance board in planning. For parking, that was another concern. Jason has some other offices in EQ Technologies, and we calculated everything based on the zoning use per code, and his whole parking or his whole center, including our coffee shop, requires 33 parking spaces, and there will be 5 remaining spaces. All the details on that are in a legend on the site map.
Can you go back to that slide?
Yeah, sure.
That was, all right. So you're saying the zoning for that particular parcel requires 33 parking spaces?
Correct.
And if this is improved, there is only going to be 5 remaining?
Correct. There'll be 5 remaining included. So that's all the parking spaces for all the office space that's already there, and then our building as well.
Are you saying a surplus of 5?
For a surplus of 5 spaces, yes. Is that?
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, hopefully clear on that. Some more comments. I think we went through most of these already. So again, the water main frontage street. We are applying to have an order board, but right away we probably do not want to have one. We want to have someone out there taking orders. This is based on the coffee consultant from Utah that's helping us. That's how they've done things for the last 8 years. And they felt just more friendly that way. It moves the line quicker. But if we did want to have an order board one day, we would be able to put one in. So the order board is on the site map. And the details of that are there, but probably will not build one right away. We just want to be able to plumb for conduit and have to use the order board if necessary. In landscaping, Mexican feathergrass and lavender, that'd be around the building. Kim had a good feedback for us in the first meeting. We need to protect our building. So on the site plan, there's 2 ballards on each side of the service window. And then there's a curb running all the way around the building. That would either be a concrete curb or some kind of landscape retaining wall. And then those Mexican feathergrass and lavender would be inside of that curb. So that should help protect the building. And closing thoughts. Again, we really want to feel like a part of the community. I'm getting a little tired sitting behind a computer all day working remotely. So I want to feel like I'm part of something. My wife feels the same way. We're a self-funded project. We're not taking a loan out for this. So we have a lot of skin in the game. We're not just going to open and leave in 2 years. We're going to do whatever it takes to make this work and be a part of the community. And lastly, this is my daughter. She just turned one last week, and we'd like to pass it down to her eventually. So that's all I have. I appreciate your time again, and open up to any questions from you guys.
Well, thank you. That was a very great presentation.
No, thanks.
It makes our job a little bit easier so we know the full story.
Yeah.
Does any of the commission members have any questions or comments? Go ahead.
Is there a reason for the roof sign as opposed to signage right out on Center Ridge?
Well, Jason, the owner, is already putting a sign out on Center Ridge, a monument sign. We just felt that that's sort of what was already done before we started negotiating. I don't feel it's big enough to display us down there, and it's moving to the lower lots is a huge business risk for us. So we're just trying to mitigate that by putting a sign that's more clear on the building. And
Would
that's
you
what
have, you would have space on that monument sign?
we would, but it would be very small.
Okay. I guess, and this is more of a comment than a question, my concern is that the site plan that you're showing with the parking spaces, 13 of those spaces on a busy day, if cars are backed up, and those stacking spaces that you're showing are not going to be accessible. So either somebody's not gonna be able to park there and the space isn't actually going to be able to be utilized, or a car is gonna be blocked in there.
Sure, one of the things, Jason, if you go past his lot right now, he's got a lot of vans and employees that park up there, so that's one of the ways we can do it, is his cars can park up there because they don't need to get in and out as much. Usually they park there for the day, so.
In the morning, they're parked there throughout the day. If it's the day where the guys aren't working, but when my guys are on the road, they park their cars, they'd be in that front row, and that's where we plan to park them, where the cars aren't gonna be coming, going to service and stops at the front row.
And how many employees do you have come to the building a day?
We have 5, tattoo shop has 2, and transform and renew has 2. So there's a total of 9. We have a middle open space right now that could potentially have, so when we did our calculation for parking, we did a worst case scenario, which was our middle space that is for lease becoming a retail space, which was gonna draw the most parking spaces, and that's where that calculation came from. If it ends up being office space, we're even better off than the few extra spots we had, but we wanted to look at it as, you know, worst case, if we need to have spaces for, you know, we wouldn't put a restaurant in there, it's not built for it. But the worst case would be retail. Best case would be an office space where you have less employees.
I apologize, but do you mind coming up and state your name and
I'm
address?
sorry. I'm Jason, I'm one of the owners of the building.
Do we have a last name?
Oh, friend, you want my address, 6,000 Denise Drive, here in Ridgeville.
Thank you.
And then how many employees do you anticipate having there in the time for the coffee shop?
It would be 4 at the most, it'd probably be a couple to begin with. For the first year.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I noticed that you got a deck on the back of the building, or however you want to orient it, is that right?
That is just a marked off spot to prevent people from hitting the building, and also there's a stairway up to the sorry, I'm gonna skip to it if I could. So that's marked off. I can look at the building right there. There's a stairway, so that lets people, if we have an employee out there taking orders from customers, that stairway will let people go up and down. The marked off section was a request from the city to put marking there to block that off for people getting in and out of the building.
I have to admit, the other concern I have is if your business is as successful as you think it's going to be. I noticed that you're actually allowing for, in your picture, 10 cars. And if you take it all the way out to the street, it looks like maybe 12 cars. I certainly don't want another Dunkin' Donuts on the bench. That enough stacking.
I believe they ran a traffic study on this. I think they determined that the morning and the evening peak was adequate. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, I don't think that the traffic study specifically addressed queuing, but
Okay.
they did not reach the threshold for enough traffic to require a full-blown traffic study, so it's still under the city requirement. You know, this was certainly a concern staff had when we first had these discussions with the applicant, which is why the building placement was really an important issue to us. We don't have any code requirement for stacking currently, or beyond that. But one of the things that gave me a little more peace of mind was the fact it's coffee only and not any food, and that food tends to be the thing that slows orders down. And that the morning peak was going to kind of be at different times than even what other traffic might be coming to the site from the other users. So of course it's a concern, but you know, 10 in a line for a coffee only establishment seems like a better situation than if we're a Dunkin' Donuts. I would certainly not think that was sufficient with their product line.
That was gonna be one of my questions, is what your average service time anticipated from the next few places that order?
I'm pretty sure we have to look into that more, but I'm pretty sure Dunkin' Donuts is about 1:30, so we're gonna try to be better than that. So it should be around there or less. And it should be less, a decent amount, because we're not serving food again, so.
Mr. Chairman, the only other comment, I feel sorry for the person that's going to be taking orders outside,
Discuss that.
Yeah.
That was my question too, yeah.
So I mean, I'll address that real quick. That was my concern when our coffee girl told us to do that. I'm like, well, she's like, what, we're in Utah. So she's like, usually the people your peak hours are only 3 hours at the most. So either you can have someone out there for 3 hours or you can split it up with a couple people. And she's like, we've been doing it for 8 years. You know, our employees like working here and it's not a huge issue. So I'm taking her word for it. She has experience. I don't, but you know, we're gonna treat our employees well. So, you know, if someone's freezing, we'll bring them inside.
There was a couple things that we discussed when I also brought that same question up. And the two things that I think gave me a little more peace of mind was one, when it's not busy, you don't need someone out there. Right? That's gonna be for your busiest times. Number two is, let's plumb for a menu board just in case that does become a concern, which is why it's on the plans today. So these are the two fail safes or failovers that made me feel better about someone standing out there when it's supposed to snow before it's blocked.
And you will not be accepting any walk-up?
Correct.
Well,
Correct.
I guess I love the idea of the coffee shop. I'm having a hard time with the site. I don't think the parking lot is big enough for what you're proposing to do with the amount of cars queuing in, the amount of parking spots that are going to be lost. I would expect something like this, maybe 500 feet east in the Marks parking lot, which could absorb some of this loss in parking spots. Like I said, I like the coffee shop. I just do not like the site that was selected. I have some big reservations on it. The fact that it's going to impact this parking lot so much. Yeah, right now, based on the businesses in the existing one, it might be okay, but you never know what's going to happen in the future. Is there any other further questions or comments from the commission? Is there any questions or comments from the administration?
I have a quick question. So, you were able to determine that the existing water service line is 1 inch. Do you feel that that's enough? Going to be enough capacity for both?
That's something we need to talk about with the city engineers in the building department. I'm not sure yet. I think it's like borderline, but we're gonna have to determine that from the city. And if it's not, we'd have to go to the street on a separate line.
And then I guess one other comment I had is the sanitary lateral that you have going into the sanitary transmission line on the neighboring property. There is an easement there, but you will have to pass through some private property first, so you have
Correct.
a good relationship with your neighbor. It could get we would require an easement on the private property, so that'd be something we'd have to accomplish it.
And this was like our first hurdle, I believe, and the city did come out, look at it, measure for it, make sure we could put the drop in there. They cambered it, they did the whole thing. And I spoke with the city diner briefly. So, hey, I'm not official, but they are aware of what we're trying to do.
And Mr. Chair, one other comment. In our staff review meeting, we had discussed that I believe the owner's intention is to repair, reseal, and restrict the parking lot, and wanted that noted on the plan as part of this.
Is there any questions or comments from the public? All right, hearing none, I will close the public comment section. Is there any further questions or comments from the commission? I guess I have one. Is this going to be a land lease or or a lot split? How is this going to be vacated? Or
So we've worked that out before we even started the process. My big concern was us owning the building when it was all said and done. So we are, not to bore you with the details of the entire agreement, but what we've agreed to is we are gonna give him kind of a rent credit towards the space he's leasing to help reimburse him for the cost of the building. But anything beyond the structure is improvements like having a sign there that we wouldn't care or need to have, or for future use if he were to move out. In the end, we would own the building after a couple terms of the lease. And if it doesn't reach that full term, then we would agree on the buyout of the difference in construction cost.
perfect. All right, at this time, the chair will entertain a motion. I make a motion to accept.
I'll second the motion. Scott?
Madam Secretary, please call roll.
Ali,
Yes.
Swallow,
Yes.
Havens,
Yes.
Smollett,
No.
motion carries.
Okay, we're gonna have a document up here with the signed one for you guys. All right, you guys are all set. Thank you.
Thank you. You just sign something up there?
Nope, you're all set.
Yeah. I do. How are you? I think it's the other way around. You might have been there before me, I'm guessing.
The agenda.
Yes, planning commission appointment to community reinvestment area housing.
Mr. Chair, for my little context on this.
Thank you.
Our city council recently updated our community reinvestment area ordinance. So in the process of updating our ordinance, amending our ordinance, we have found that back when the ordinance was initially introduced, I think back in the 90s, 94, a housing council was the body that was to convene a program to oversee requirement. But instead of the CRA program initially was a housing program. It was established by the state of Ohio to reinvest in neighborhoods. And it transformed eventually into more of an economic development tool for commercial industrial property. That's where I think the name comes from, but it is the group that would oversee any tax abatement agreements that the city would have. So instead we had a tax abatement review board, but it didn't really have the same composition of the state required housing council. So this most recent update, one of the things it did was to abolish the TARP and reinforce that we need to seat a housing council, which has a very, under the ORC, has a very specific composition. It's 2 appointments of the mayor, 2 appointments of the legislative authority, 1 appointment of the planning commission, and then 2 members that are appointed by the rest of that group that must be residents. So the responsibility of the group will be for the annual monitoring, so it'll be a minimum of 1 meeting per year. And there might be other times in which the housing council might convene if there's a need to discuss or, you know, the performance of an agreement or a particular application, but there would be no like regular meeting schedule associated with it. So we do need an appointment from the planning commission.
Okay, you said that at least it's gonna be 1 meeting, and then if something happens, council could dictate, hey, we need to have a meeting on that.
Sure, if there's an issue with one of the agreements or, you know, typically housing councils aren't used to like recommend applications, but in the past, the tax abatement review board has done that. So it's possible that this housing council might take a little bit more of an active role in reviewing applications versus at the forefront versus just after it's already been awarded. I can't really speak to that just yet, but I know it won't be a regular meeting schedule as planning commission or BZA or civil service or city council. So it'll be as needed, once a year plus as needed.
Does anybody, any commission members have any questions or comments? You want to have discussion? Is there anybody who was interested to sit on this board? Okay.
Once a year.
Let's as we did.
Okay, at this time, the chair will entertain a nomination. Thank you. It's late. I guess I nominate Jen Swallow. Do I have a second?
Second,
Okay. Is there any other nominations? Hearing none, nominations are closed for the Community Reinvestment Area and Housing Council member. At this time, Madam Secretary, please call roll.
Ali,
Yes.
Swallow,
Yes.
Evans,
yes.
Smolik.
Yes. Congratulations. All right. And I think that is it for the City of North Ridgeville Plan Commission meeting for October 11th. We are adjourned. Go try.
Good job. Good job.
Okay.